This is the Saucony Triumph 21, which was my 2023 Max Cushion Shoe of the Year. Hey everybody, welcome to Rad Dad Bod TV. I'm Eric McIntyre, aka Rad Dad Bod, and today we're doing a quick review of the Saucony Triumph 21. Just some quick disclosures for the shoe. I actually did pay for the shoe out of pocket, but I got a pretty steep discount from my local running store because I make content for them, and many of these reviews will be repurposed for their websites. But either way, neither the brand nor the store approved these videos beforehand. These thoughts are entirely my own. Starting off with the specs of the shoe, this is a Max Cushion daily trainer. It has a heel stack of 39mm and a forefoot stack of 29mm, which makes it a 10mm heel to toe drop. As far as technology in the shoes, Saucony used the Power Run Plus foam in the midsole. This is kind of their, what I would say, like their mid-tier foam. It's not their super shoe foam, but it's also not kind of a normal daily trainer foam for them. It's a little bit more plush, a little bit bouncier overall than kind of Power Run standard. As far as the outsole goes, they use what they call an XT900 carbon rubber for added durability and traction, and I can vouch for this. There is really good durability, really good traction, especially for a daily trainer. The upper is made of a flat knit material, which is kind of this woven material that you're seeing here, and it has a pretty, I would call, medium cushion tongue that looks like it is fully gusseted inside the shoe. Outside of that, they also use what they call an adaptive lacing system, which are these loops right here, and we'll speak a little bit more about that as we get into kind of the good and the bad of the shoe. This shoe weighs in at 10 ounces, which even for a Max Cushion shoe is kind of on the heavier side. For the most part, I'm a 10.5 in most men's running shoes, and that is true for the Saucony Triumph 21 as well. All right, now that we got the specs out of the way, let's talk about what I've liked about the shoe. Overall, I'm going to say the fit of the shoe is pretty spot on for me. This adaptive lacing system kind of seemed like a gimmick, if I'm being honest, when I first tried on the shoes or read about the specs, but they really do cinch down the laces and keep your midfoot locked in place, which is a huge plus as I blister easily, so I don't want to be sliding around in the shoe. Despite that lockdown, I would say that the shoe fits pretty roomy. It's definitely not like a super wide toe box, but it's definitely a standard width toe box, and so your toes aren't going to feel cramped in that. And the heel as well, you've got plenty of room there. And so all in all, it's a roomy fit without feeling overly wide. I don't know if I would necessarily recommend this for wide-footed runners, but again, it checks the boxes of just kind of overall fit and comfort. Speaking of that comfort, the Saucony Triumph 21 has found a balance between being plush and being kind of overbearing, which I feel like a lot of Max Cushion shoes will do. They almost swallow your foot. Triumph 21 doesn't always feel like a Max Cushion shoe, but it has those elements of comfort. So you have a really nice kind of soft material, really good heel counter here, and you have a little bit of a flare so you don't get that Achilles rubbing, which is nice. The tongue is just kind of the perfect amount of plush for a Max Cushion shoe, where it's not this massive piece of fabric that kind of gets in the way, but it is very, very soft, very, very comfortable. And the flat knit is really nice. I mean, it kind of looks like a premium material, if I'm being honest, but it still manages to breathe and it keeps you secure and locked in, where that's always a concern with some of the knits that are out there, that your foot is kind of going to move around with the upper instead of getting locked down. The midsole itself doesn't really feel like a Max Cushion shoe, right? Sometimes when I think Max Cushion, again, I feel like a shoe that will keep me plodding along. A Max Cushion shoe is a shoe that I might take on a recovery run because I want to slow down, and the shoe kind of cues you and forces you to slow down. But the Power Run Plus foam is really nice. It's almost bouncy. It's not overly soft in my mind, and it's certainly not like responsive, like you're not flying in these shoes by any means, but the material is responsive enough to where if you wanted to go kind of on a moderate effort long run, you definitely could. I just wouldn't be doing like any intervals or anything in it. But honestly, that's not what the shoe's really for, right? The shoe is for those daily miles, maybe even a long run, depending on who you are. And so I could definitely see myself putting in some long run miles with the Power Run Plus foam. It's kind of become a favorite of mine, even though I was actually skeptical trying it out because Saucony foams haven't been my favorite over the last few years. I know I'm going to catch some heat from that. The Power Run PB foam, I've tried it. It is probably the most responsive on-foot foam, like right out of the box in my mind. The problem with it is the stability or lack of stability that often kind of is accompanied with that. Full disclosure though, I haven't tried a Endorphin Pro or Endorphin Speed since the 2, so I'll have to change that this year and give you an update. One last thing I really liked is the outsole of the shoe. You have plenty of coverage here, and as someone who runs in the snow or kind of snowy, icy, wet conditions outside, especially in the winter here in Utah, traction, sometimes I'll wear trail shoes on the road just to get a little bit more of that grip. The outsole has been very, very durable. I have, I think, 70-ish miles on these shoes, and if I washed them up, you'd have no idea based on that outsole that it wasn't brand new. Typically, I'll see some wearing as I am a midfoot or heel striker, depending on the shoe. Especially in a higher drop shoe, I'll heel strike a little bit more, and so I'm surprised that I actually don't see any wearing on the outsole right here as I come through in my normal stride. And so again, 70-ish miles in, and you would not be able to tell. Last thing I'll say I really, really liked about this shoe is the overall stability. This is by no means a stability or motion control shoe, but because of the general width, as well as kind of these cutouts and different things within the shoe, it actually is a very, very stable ride, and I may suggest it for someone who likes light stability but doesn't want all of the rigid stability elements that come with a stability shoe. I think that's a trend that we're going to be seeing with a lot more max cushion shoes, and I'll talk about that with some of its cross-brand counterparts like the Brooks Ghost Max or the Hoka Clifton, where because of how wide they are and how you sit in the shoe on top of the foam, or sometimes even within the foam, these max cushion shoes are turning into very, very stable options for people. Now, as far as dislikes, I have no like singular negative thing to say about the shoe. Like, there's nothing about it that really stood out to me that made me want to run less in it. In fact, even though it's a 10mm heel to toe drop, which is not my preference, I still found myself reaching for it and finding excuses to use it. And so that tells me that, yeah, it's a shoe that I very, very much enjoyed and wasn't just wearing out of obligation to get enough miles for a review. I think the one thing I will say is that maybe it kind of blends categories too much. So it's a max cushion shoe, but it runs a little bit more like a daily trainer and has a little bit more responsiveness than some people may prefer for kind of that max cushion option. But really, that just speaks to the versatility of the shoe. Personally, I used it on some long runs. I used it on some just normal easy runs. I used it on kind of some tempo style incline workouts on the treadmill. And so I used it across a lot of different workouts, and overall, again, just nothing negative to say about the shoe. It was just a really, really solid option. If Saucony could change anything to it going into the 22 that will likely release this year, I would simply say, I mean, if they want to lower the stack or the drop by, 2mm, drop it down to an 8 or even a 6, that's kind of my sweet spot, is that 5-6 zone. So that would be the only thing I would change, but then it would probably be an entirely different shoe. Now, who would like the Saucony Triumph 21? First and foremost, I believe that you should get fitted at a running store and try on all different types of shoes and do a gait analysis to determine, well, what kind of drop or what kind of shoe that you prefer. For the most part though, when you look at a higher drop shoe, this one being 10mm, people who are typically forefoot strikers are going to be the people who enjoy that the most, because it will take some of that stress off of the Achilles, and oftentimes forefoot strikers have some Achilles or calf issues. Now, if you're someone who finds that the Hoka Clifton is just a little bit too bulky for you, that you don't like kind of that more firm foam feeling underfoot, then this might be a good alternative if you're looking for a max cushion shoe that's going to give you a little bit more bounce. If you're someone who wants a shoe that can do a little bit of everything, especially if you're a little bit newer to running where you're not going to be doing as much speed work, this is a great kind of, I think you could take it up to tempo paces. It's a great long run. It's a great easy day kind of do it all style shoe, and it's going to be very versatile. But yeah, at the end of the day, if you want a shoe that's going to be a little bit bouncier than most max cushion shoes, then the Saucony Triumph 21 is going to be the move for you. Talking about some comparisons to other shoes, kind of where it fits. When you think max cushion, a lot of people will think of the Hoka Clifton, specifically the new model, the Hoka Clifton 9. Again, when you compare these two shoes, what I would say is the Triumph 21 is bouncier, a little bit softer in the midsole, versus the Clifton is going to be plush but firm underfoot. So if you want something that really kind of feels more like a pillow for your foot versus something that's going to be a little bit bouncy under a foot. The Clifton's going to be more of that pillow foam feel. The Triumph's going to be more of that bouncy feel. Now, ironically, the Clifton is actually lighter than the Triumph, and you can actually feel it quite easily when you pick up the two shoes next to each other. So that's something to keep in mind. But if I'm being completely honest, I really didn't mind the weight in the Triumph just because of the way that the midsole kind of rotates through and bounces forward, as opposed to the Clifton, while being lighter than the Triumph, is a little bit bulkier in its transition. One more quick comparison for you as far as max cushion. Again, the Brooks Ghost Max is another max cushion option out there. I believe the stack is going to be pretty similar, though I'd have to confirm that. As far as the Triumph goes, though, the Triumph, again, is going to be maybe bouncier, but in my opinion, the Brooks Ghost Max does have a slightly firmer foam that kind of propels you forward a little bit better. So this will be a little bit bouncy, but may not propel you, versus this is going to be a firm and give you more energy return. What's nice about the Saucony Triumph 21 is it's just an overall very versatile shoe. Again, max cushion doesn't really feel max cushion in the same way that a lot of other shoes do, though. So all in all, I'm a big fan of the shoe, and I'm excited to see what Saucony does for their 2024 model, the Saucony Triumph 22, that I believe is coming out later this year. As always, thanks for sticking around to the end of the video. If you liked what you saw today, please go ahead and hit that like and subscribe button, and share this video with your friends so they can also see the review of the Saucony Triumph 21.